Hello guys, welcome back to my channel. We're going to be doing another speed draw today. This is going to be some fan art for the Netflix series Wednesday, which I'm sure we've all seen by now. And I actually drew this while watching the miniseries through for the first time, which was very fun. So I had to edit out a lot of breaks as I stopped drawing and just was watching the series by itself. So for this one, I do want to very strongly warn about the photosensitivity warning because, like my Huevember drawings, there is going to be a lot of flashing. I did slow the video down quite a bit. This one is going to be 10 minutes long instead of the 5 minutes that my Huevember drawings were, so it's not as disorienting in that sense. However, the stationary canvas for this one is a lot smaller. I just couldn't fit it any bigger on the page, so the flashing part of the video is going to be taking up a lot more room. But with that in mind, I, again, really enjoyed the series, really enjoyed the art on this one, so without any further ado, please enjoy. So just starting off right out the gate here by laying down a really basic pose. Like I said, I am starting this drawing as I am watching the Netflix series for the first time. And other than the Netflix series, I really don't have a point of reference for Wednesday for any of the Addams Family, aside from popular media and fan spaces, because this is the first piece of Addams Family media that I've actually consumed. I've always liked the idea and the aesthetic of the Addams Family. I just, before streaming services were around when I was a kid, I just didn't have access to the TV show or the movies, because if they weren't on TV, I didn't watch them. I didn't have access to streaming services like we do nowadays. But now that we do, I am definitely going to start watching. I want to watch the movie. I want to watch the TV series. I think there's 2 movies. And it's because of this show. I just really, really enjoyed this show. I really enjoyed the character. And I know a lot of people are saying that the character is not very similar to the original series, but I'm fine with that. I think characters are allowed to grow and change as media changes, as current interests and pop culture changes. So there were a couple parts of the sketch process that I want to touch on while we're doing the line art here. One is I, again, started this the second I hit the play button on the Netflix series, so I really didn't know how to characterize Wednesday with the pose. So I just picked a very simple, kind of boring pose, if I'm being perfectly honest. I definitely was not happy with it for a little while. I was thinking of changing it to something a little bit more dynamic. And then Thing popped on screen, and I absolutely love Thing. He and I think Cousin It were like my 2 favorite characters that I've seen of the original series. So I was super happy that they made him a part of this series, and I just popped him on top of Wednesday's head there, and I think in combination with the sort of simple sternness of the pose and then Thing's funny little energy sitting on top, I think that made a great composition for the piece. So I am happy that I kept the original pose once Thing popped up and made it a little more fun. And then the second thing I want to address on the sketch is her right arm, the one that's holding the apple. I had so much trouble with this. You could already see that I changed it a couple times in the initial sketch phase. And then once I get to lining it, I do believe I'm going to change it again. What I have right now, I'm actually not too mad about. The proportions are a little bit off, and I do change that later. But I kind of wish I had kept this same angle where she's holding it away from her body. I do change it later on so that her elbow is tucked a little closer to her waist. But I think in the end, the final product turned out pretty good, so I'm not too mad about it. And as you can also see with the hair there, I did have to redraw the braids a couple times. Hair and braids especially are one of my favorite things to draw, but they're also one of the most difficult things to draw because there's just so much detail and texture in there. And when you do something like symmetrical braids, you have to be really careful to make sure that your lines are very precise. Otherwise, it's really easy to get like a kink or a curl in the braid that you just didn't want there. And with Wednesday's braids especially, her hair, she wears her braids very thin, very straight, and the way that I draw hair is very big and very voluminous. So it was hard trying to slim them down, and I definitely didn't get them to the size that they are in the miniseries, but I think it translates well enough. And we're just moving on to color here, blocking out everything as always. For Wednesday, I really, really wanted to stick to some desaturated colors because at this point in the series, they were definitely talking a lot about how Wednesday is just black and white. Her whole aesthetic is black and white. All she ever wears is black and white. I think at one point Morticia said she was allergic to color, which I thought was very funny. So even though Jenna Ortega has kind of darker skin, I did want to keep Wednesday kind of as ashy as possible. I think I might have made her skin a little... Oh, this was the part where the dress showed up on screen for the first time, so I wanted to do a little thumbnail for later. Do some fan art of that at another time. What was I saying? So yeah, the skin tone on this, I think I ended up making it just a little bit too light. That's kind of what happens when you desaturate colors, is they tend to look a little lighter than they're supposed to, which is unfortunate, but I think it also kind of worked out because I wanted her to be really ashy, really desaturated, like she almost is in grayscale. And same with the apple, I didn't want to do like a super bright red, one, to match the character, and two, to kind of make it look a little bit rotten. I didn't want it like falling apart in her hands, but I definitely wanted it to look unappetizing. And usually I don't do cell shading until all the colors are finished. I thought I had gotten everything, but as you can see, I missed the cuff on her sleeve on the right hand. Completely missed that. I forgot the stripes on the jacket, and I forgot the crest for the school on the jacket as well. And I will remember those pretty soon here. I'll go back into color and finish those up. But the crest on the jacket, oh, it took me a long time to notice that was missing. I did not fix that until well into the shading process. There we go with the cuff and the stripes. There we go, all fixed. And then it's going to take a very long time for that crest to appear because, again, completely forgot it was there. I think I noticed it in the show and then realized I hadn't drawn it and had to go back in and do that. But again, I was almost finished with the piece before I remembered it. So we're just going in with the cell shading here. And then for my Huevember drawings, I kind of stopped at cell shading because I was doing a drawing a day. I wanted to get them done really quickly. Whereas this one, I finished this one over the course of, I think, 4 days. So the cell shading is always my first step. I think it just adds that bit of dimension that you need to kind of keep going with the piece. And then after the cell shading is finished, I'm going to go in with the softer shading, which is what I just did there with the apple. And I don't like to go too heavy with the soft shading. I really just do this to add just a little bit more dimension. And you can tell the difference if you see them both side by side, but honestly, it's not something a lot of people notice just looking at the piece. And I'm fine with that. It's just a little bit. It's a little touch that I think really helps the piece come to life. It is a lot easier to notice on the skin, especially with her skin being a lot lighter than the black hair, black jacket, black everything she's got going on. Yeah, I do really enjoy the soft shading. I think it adds a lot to the character. I just didn't do it for my Huevember drawings because it is an extra step that's not entirely needed. And then for the highlight here, I didn't want to go in with too much highlight and in fact, I think I just did it on her skin and the apple. And then, oh, there's the crest. Just getting that in real quick because I forgot it. And then the only major highlighting I did for this piece was on her hair. I did the H highlights, which you'll see in a second here. It's my favorite way to highlight the hair. I think it looks so cool and sleek and just really shiny when you do it that way. Finishing up the crest, there we go. So the way that I do this is I basically just take the hair into little sections, and then I'll put a stripe down one side of the section, a stripe down the other side, and then connect them with that little like wavy H in the middle. And it just makes it look super, super shiny. I came across this technique of highlighting, absolutely fell in love with it, and I have not used anything since. This is my favorite way to highlight hair or anything with that same like sleek, silky texture. I absolutely love it. And then doing more highlighting on the braids here. This process, it does take a very long time. I think it's totally worth it, but you do have to hit every single strand of hair. And then once the highlighting on the braids is done, I'm going to go back in with that glitter layer, as I like to call it. And that's just that extra little shine, the highlights in the eyes, if they've got like glossy lips, a little bit of shine on the lips, and then that last streak on the hair to really make it look, make it pop out a bit, like there's a direct light source on the hair. I love adding that layer. I think it's just the final like cherry on top of the piece. It really makes it pop. And then, as always, going for that sticker aesthetic, so adding a really dark outline around the whole piece, and then behind that, a lighter outline. And at this point, I was almost through the last episode of the show, so I just sort of doodled this little background in to pass the time while I was watching that final episode. But I actually really like it. I think it lent a lot to this piece. It looks more like a framed portrait than just a fan art drawing that I did. And I think I'm going to add that background or that style of background into more of my pieces just to give a little bit of interest to anything that doesn't have a full background in it. And that is my speed draw for my Wednesday fan art. If you guys would like to follow me on my art journey, you can find me on TikTok and Instagram. And I also have a Patreon where you can get exclusive and early access to a lot of content, including new videos coming out. And I also just relaunched my Twitch channel, so you can find me there doing a lot of art live streams. I'm going to be doing some gaming, maybe some chatting on occasion. And make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can find your way back for the next video. Thank you guys so much for watching and have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!